people keep hurting you. Not once, not randomly, repeatedly. Different people, different contexts, same outcome. Betrayal, exploitation, disappointment, being used, being discarded. And you keep asking, why does this keep happening to me? What's wrong with me that attracts people who hurt me? Here's what Machiavelli would tell you. Nothing is wrong with you. But you're signaling something. You're broadcasting patterns that make you identifiable to people who hurt others. And until you stop signaling, they'll keep selecting you. Not because you deserve it, because you're recognizable. And in Machiavelli's world, being recognizable to predators means being targetable. He called this segnali di vulnerabilità, vulnerability signals. Patterns in how you behave, respond, and relate that tell certain people, this person is safe to exploit. This person won't fight back effectively. This person is a viable target. The harsh reality is, you can't control whether predatory people exist, but you can control whether you're broadcasting the signals they hunt for. In the next 12 minutes, I'm going to show you why people keep hurting you, what signals you're broadcasting, how Machiavelli understood this pattern, and exactly how to stop being selected. Because the hurting stops when the signaling stops. Let me show you the pattern. Here's why people keep hurting you. You're broadcasting 5 specific signals that attract people who hurt others. Not consciously, not intentionally, but consistently. And people who exploit others are trained, consciously or unconsciously, to recognize these exact signals. Machiavelli understood. Predatory opportunisti, opportunistic predators, don't hunt randomly. They hunt strategically. They look for specific vulnerability markers. And when they find them, they select that person as target. You're not attracting bad people because you're bad. You're attracting them because you're recognizable. And recognition is the vulnerability. Let me show you the 5 signals you're probably broadcasting. Signal 1. You explain and justify your boundaries. The first signal. When you set a boundary, you explain why. You justify it. You give reasons. You try to make the other person understand and agree with your boundary before you enforce it. Here's what that signals. This person's boundaries are negotiable. If I provide good enough counterarguments, this person will bend their boundary. This boundary isn't real. It's a preference they can be talked out of. Machiavelli observed, confini spiegati, explained boundaries, are weak boundaries. Because explanation creates negotiation, and negotiation means the boundary is flexible. Real talk. Every time you've explained your boundary to someone, and they've pushed back with reasons why your boundary doesn't make sense or isn't fair or is too rigid, what happened? You either bent the boundary or felt guilty about maintaining it. That's the signal working. People who respect boundaries don't need explanations. They hear no and accept it. People who exploit boundaries use your explanations as negotiation openings. They argue against your reasons, create exceptions, make you feel unreasonable for having the boundary. And you keep explaining, keep justifying, keep trying to make them understand. Which signals? Keep pushing. This boundary will eventually bend. Signal 2. You give second chances before first chances are complete. The second signal. You give second chances immediately after someone violates a boundary or hurts you, before they've demonstrated genuine change, before first chance is even fully completed. Here's what that signals. This person doesn't enforce consequences. Apologize, and everything resets. I can violate boundaries, say sorry, and continue violating. No real consequences exist. Machiavelli called this perdono prematuro, premature forgiveness. And he observed, people who forgive before consequences are felt teach that bad behavior is cost-free. Just apologize and continue. This is probably your pattern. Someone hurts you. They apologize. Maybe they cry. Maybe they explain why they did it. Maybe they promise to change. And you forgive immediately. Give them another chance. Reset the relationship as if the violation didn't happen. That signals, I can hurt this person repeatedly. Just apologize each time. No lasting consequences. No real accountability. Just temporary discomfort. Then everything returns to normal. And people who hurt others recognize this signal instantly. They test it early. Small boundary violation. Quick apology. Watch if you truly enforce consequence or immediately forgive. If you immediately forgive, you've been identified as someone who gives infinite chances. Signal 3. You overfunction in relationships. The third signal. You do more than your share. More emotional labor. More accommodation. More flexibility. More giving. You overfunction, while others underfunction. Here's what that signals. This person will compensate for my low effort. This person will do the work of 2 people. I can be lazy, selfish, low investment, and they'll just work harder to maintain the relationship. That's sovrafunzionamento, overfunctioning. Machiavelli understood. People who do more than their share in relationships attract people who want to do less than their share. Because the math works. Your overfunctioning enables their underfunctioning. And here's the pattern. You start relationships doing your share, but gradually you notice the other person isn't reciprocating. So you do more. You pick up their slack. You compensate for their low effort because you want the relationship to work. That overfunctioning signals, I'll maintain this relationship even if you don't. I'll do both people's work. You can extract value without equal investment. And people who exploit relationships recognize this signal. They start with low investment. Watch if you compensate by increasing yours. If you do, they decrease theirs further. Because you've signaled you'll maintain the relationship regardless of their effort level. Signal 4. You accept disrespect without consequence. The fourth signal. When people are disrespectful, mildly rude, dismissive, inconsiderate, you accept it without enforcing consequence. Maybe you mention it, but you don't actually change your behavior toward them. Here's what that signals. This person tolerates disrespect. I can treat them poorly without losing access to them. No real consequences exist for bad treatment. Machiavelli observed, mancanza di rispetto tollerata, tolerated disrespect, is diagnostic test. People test early with mild disrespect. Watch your response. If you tolerate it, they escalate. If you enforce consequence, they either respect you or exit. Think about your pattern. Someone is mildly disrespectful. You feel uncomfortable. Maybe you say something, that wasn't nice. But then what? Do you actually change how you interact with them? Do you reduce access, create distance, enforce any consequence? Or do you continue interacting exactly the same way? Still available, still giving, still treating them well despite their disrespect. That signals, disrespect has no cost. I'll continue providing value to you even if you treat me poorly. My treatment of you isn't contingent on your treatment of me. And people who hurt others recognize this immediately. Mild disrespect is test. Your response, tolerance without consequence, is signal that you're exploitable. Signal 5. You prioritize their comfort over your boundaries. The fifth signal. When there's conflict between your boundary and their comfort, you prioritize their comfort. You bend your boundary to avoid making them uncomfortable. Here's what that signals. This person's boundaries aren't real if they cause me discomfort. I can make them choose between their boundary and my comfort, and they'll choose my comfort. Their boundaries are negotiable through emotional pressure. That's confini flexibili, flexible boundaries. And Machiavelli understood. People whose boundaries bend under emotional pressure have no real boundaries. Just preferences they'll abandon to avoid conflict or discomfort. Real talk. This is probably your core pattern. Someone pushes your boundary. You enforce it. They become upset, hurt, uncomfortable, and you feel guilty. So you bend your boundary. Okay, just this once. I don't want to upset you. That signals. Apply emotional pressure, and this person's boundaries disappear. Their need to avoid my discomfort is stronger than their need to maintain boundaries. And people who exploit others use this constantly. Push boundary. When enforced, become upset. Cry. Get hurt. Make the boundary setter feel like the bad guy. Watch if they bend to relieve the emotional pressure. If they do, their boundaries are fake. They'll bend every time. The uncomfortable truth is all 5 of these signals are things you probably do, thinking you're being kind. Understanding, forgiving, flexible, good person qualities. But Machiavelli would tell you, to predatory people, these aren't kindness signals. They're vulnerability signals. They're identifying markers that say, this person is safe to exploit, won't enforce real consequences, will tolerate poor treatment, can be manipulated through emotion, will do relationship work for both people. You're not doing anything wrong morally, but you're doing something recognizable tactically, and recognizable means targetable. Now let me show you how Machiavelli stops this pattern. So how does Machiavelli stop people from repeatedly hurting you? How do you stop broadcasting the 5 vulnerability signals? Not by becoming mean, not by trusting no one, by implementing what Machiavelli called autodifesa preventiva, preventive self-defense. 5 counter-signals that make you unrecognizable to people who hurt others. Counter-signal 1. State boundaries without explanation. The first counter. When you set a boundary, state it clearly. Then stop. No explanation. No justification. No reasons. Just the boundary. I don't lend money to friends. I'm not available after 10 p.m. I don't discuss my personal life at work. That's it. Statement, period. No because follows. When you don't explain, you signal. This boundary isn't negotiable. Your understanding isn't required. Your agreement isn't necessary. The boundary exists regardless of your opinion about it. Machiavelli called this confini assoluti, absolute boundaries. Not harsh, not mean, just non-negotiable. And non-negotiable boundaries filter out people who would have exploited negotiable ones. People who respect boundaries hear no without explanation and accept it. People who would exploit boundaries push for explanation so they can argue. When you don't provide it, they recognize this person isn't exploitable through negotiation, and they move on to easier targets. Counter-signal 2. Consequences before second chances. The second counter. When someone violates a boundary or hurts you, consequence happens first. Second chance comes only after they've experienced the consequence and demonstrated genuine change over time. They violate boundary. Consequence is immediate. Maybe that's distance, maybe reduced access, maybe end in interaction, maybe no longer providing something, but consequence is real and immediate. Second chance comes later, after they've felt the consequence, after they've demonstrated changed behavior, not after they apologized, not after they explained, after they changed. That's conseguenze prima del perdono, consequences before forgiveness. And it signals, hurting me has real cost. Apology doesn't erase consequence. Change behavior, maintain change. Then we discuss second chance. Machiavelli observed, people who enforce consequences before forgiveness stop attracting people who hurt repeatedly. Because repeat offenders are only looking for infinite chances. One-time mistakes are willing to accept consequence and change. Pause here. Go to comments. Which of the 5 signals do you recognize in yourself? Just the number. Signal 1 or Signal 4? Recognition without shame is first step to stopping the pattern. Counter signal. 3. Match energy. Don't compensate. The third counter. Match the other person's investment level. Don't exceed it. Don't compensate for their low investment by increasing yours. They text once a day. You text once a day. Not 5 times. They put in minimal effort. You match minimal effort. Not maximum effort. They're occasionally available. You're occasionally available. Not always available. That's reciprocita energetica, energy reciprocity. And it signals, I won't do the work of 2 people. If you want more from me, invest more yourself. I match, not compensate. This feels uncomfortable initially. Your impulse is to overfunction, to pick up slack, to make the relationship work through your extra effort. But matching energy signals, this person won't enable my low investment. If I want this relationship, I need to actually invest. That filters out people who want one-sided relationships where they extract without giving. Counter signal 4. Disrespect reduces access. The fourth counter. When someone is disrespectful, access to you reduces immediately. Not dramatically, just proportionally. They disrespect you, they get less of you. Mildly rude, you become slightly less available, less responsive, less generous with your time and energy. Repeatedly disrespectful? Access reduces significantly. Maybe you stop initiating. Maybe you only respond occasionally. Maybe you exit completely. That's rispetto cum requisito. Respect as requirement. And it signals, my treatment of you is contingent on your treatment of me. Disrespect reduces what you get from me. Respect maintains access. You choose. Machiavelli understood. People who reduce access in response to disrespect train others to be respectful. People who maintain access despite disrespect train others that disrespect is cost-free. Counter signal. 5. Your boundaries override their comfort. The fifth counter. When your boundary creates their discomfort, the boundary holds. Their discomfort doesn't bend your boundary. They're upset about your boundary. I understand you're upset. The boundary remains. They're hurt you won't bend? I hear that you're hurt. My boundary stands. They pressure emotionally? I recognize the pressure. My answer is still no. That's confini incrollabili, unshakable boundaries. And it signals, emotional pressure doesn't work on this person. Their boundaries are real. They don't bend to relieve my discomfort. Real talk. This is hardest counter signal. Because watching someone be upset by your boundary feels terrible. Every instinct says, just bend it. Make them comfortable. Avoid conflict. But bending boundaries to manage others' emotions signals. This person is controllable through emotional display. Get upset, and they'll cave. holding boundaries despite discomfort signals. This person maintains boundaries regardless of my emotional response, not controllable through emotion. Those are the 5 counter signals. No explanation boundaries. Consequences before second chances. Energy matching. Access reduction for disrespect. Boundaries over comfort. Implement all 5, and you stop broadcasting vulnerability signals. You start broadcasting. This person isn't exploitable, has real boundaries, enforces real consequences, won't overfunction, won't bend under pressure. That makes you unrecognizable to people who hurt others, not because they can't see you, because they recognize your high-cost target, not worth the effort. They move on to easier targets broadcasting vulnerability signals. So what actually changes when you stop broadcasting vulnerability signals and start broadcasting counter signals? 3 immediate shifts, and they happen quickly. First, different people appear in your life. People who hurt others stop selecting you, not because they became good people, because you stopped being recognizable as easy target. You're now high effort, low payoff. They hunt elsewhere. But people who respect boundaries start appearing more. Not because they weren't around before, because previously you were attracting and tolerating boundary violators. So respectful people were crowded out or didn't stick around. Now you're filtering for them through your counter signals. That's selezione attraverso segnali, selection through signals. You're attracting different people not by changing who you are fundamentally, but by changing what you signal about how you'll be treated. Second, existing relationships either improve or end. People currently in your life respond to your new signals. Some adjust their behavior. Oh, this person has real boundaries now. Disrespect has consequences now. I need to actually treat them well. Those relationships improve, become more balanced, more respectful, more reciprocal. Other people exit. This person isn't exploitable anymore, no longer worth my time. And they leave. Not dramatically usually, just fade. Reduce contact, move on to easier targets. Both outcomes protect you. Improved relationships become healthier. Ended relationships were exploitative. Losing exploitative relationships isn't loss, it's liberation. Machiavelli understood. Confini cum filtro. Boundaries as filter. Real boundaries filter out people who would violate them. People who leave when you enforce boundaries were only there because you didn't enforce boundaries. You haven't lost anything valuable. Third, you stop being repeatedly hurt. This is obvious but worth stating explicitly. When you stop broadcasting vulnerability signals, people stop selecting you as target. When people stop selecting you as target, you stop being repeatedly hurt. Not because you found better people, because you stopped being recognizable to worse people, and you stopped tolerating poor treatment from people already in your life. The pattern of repeated hurt ends, not because the world became safer, because you became less vulnerable. Through different signals, through real boundaries, through actual consequences. Real talk. When I implemented these counter signals, my life changed dramatically within months. People who had been exploiting me exited. People who had been disrespectful suddenly became respectful or left. New people entering my life were fundamentally different. They respected boundaries by default. I didn't become a different person. I changed what I signaled about how I could be treated. That changed who stayed in my life and how they treated me. That's the power of counter signals. You don't have to change who you are. Just change what you broadcast about what you'll tolerate. Here's why people keep hurting you. You're broadcasting 5 vulnerability signals, explaining boundaries, premature forgiveness, overfunctioning, tolerating disrespect, bending boundaries for comfort, and how Machiavelli stops it. 5 counter signals. State boundaries without explanation. Consequences before second chances. Match energy. Reduce access for disrespect. Hold boundaries despite discomfort. So here's what you do starting immediately. Pick one signal you recognize in yourself, the one that resonated most strongly. Implement its counter signal. This week, every interaction. If you explain boundaries, stop. State them. Period. No explanation. If you immediately forgive, stop. Consequence first. Change demonstrated. Then second chance. If you overfunction, stop. Match their energy. Don't exceed it. If you tolerate disrespect, stop. Disrespect reduces access immediately. If you bend boundaries, stop. Hold them despite discomfort. One signal, one counter signal, 1 week. Watch what happens. Either people adjust to your new signal or they exit. Both outcomes protect you. Machiavelli understood. You can't control whether predatory people exist, but you can control whether you're recognizable to them. Stop broadcasting vulnerability. Start broadcasting strength. And watch how quickly people stop selecting you to hurt. Apply one counter signal this week and break the pattern of repeated hurt.